In the far reaches of space, the Galactic Alliance had fought for years against the Jator swarm. Creatures that moved like a living tide, devouring planets and stripping them of life. Every battle ended the same way. Cities gone, skies darkened, and silence where life had once been. The Alliance had strong fleets, advanced weapons, and brave soldiers. But none of it mattered. The Jator didn't fear death. They didn't retreat. For every swarm destroyed, 2 more appeared. Now, even the great capital worlds were falling. So the Council of the Alliance sent out a message. A desperate broadcast sent on every frequency, across every known star route. To any who hear, this we call for saviors. The Jator will not stop until we are all gone. If you have warriors, if you have ships, if you have anything, come. For weeks, there was no reply. Then, one day, the signal came back from a small blue world, called Earth. On the massive Alliance station Corin 7, alien officials gathered in the main docking bay. They expected to meet noble-looking heroes in polished armor, the kind who would give inspiring speeches and stand tall for the cameras. Instead, they got something else. A dark ship slid silently into the hangar. Its hull was marked with strange symbols, not the bright, hopeful colors of most military fleets, but deep blacks and grays. It landed without ceremony, engines humming low, and its ramp dropped with a heavy thud. Out stepped the humans. There were only 12 of them, each wearing heavy black exosuits that looked more like something built for deep mines or toxic planets than for battle. Their helmets had narrow, glare-like visors. Their weapons were thick, ugly, and gave the impression that they weren't made for stunning, only for ending things. The tallest one, a man with sharp features and gray eyes, stepped forward. He removed his helmet, revealing a face marked with thin scars. "I'm Captain Rain, Legion of Black. Earth heard your call. We're here to handle your problem." The alien commander in charge, a scaled officer named Virek, blinked slowly. "We expected more ships, more soldiers." Rain's tone was flat. "You don't need more soldiers. You need the right ones." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. The first briefing was tense. Holograms of Jator attacks played above the table, waves of black insect-like creatures tearing through streets, climbing over each other in impossible numbers. Virek explained how the Alliance had fought them for years, always losing ground. "Our strategy has been to defend key cities and evacuate civilians. But every time we hold a position, they overwhelm us." Rain studied the holograms in silence. His soldiers stood behind him, motionless. Finally, he said, "You're fighting them wrong." The room went quiet. Virek frowned. "We've tried every—" "No," Rain interrupted. "You've tried every defense, but you're not here to hold ground. You're here to end them. The Jator don't understand fear, but they understand one thing: extinction. That's what we bring." One of the council members, a soft-voiced, winged alien named Sithra, looked unsettled. "Our goal was to find saviors, not destroyers." Rain gave a thin smile. "Sometimes they're the same thing." The next day, the Legion left for the planet Vornis Prime, a mining colony that had been under siege for months. The Alliance fleet stayed in orbit, ready to provide support. They expected the humans to land carefully, set up defensive lines, and request reinforcements before making any move. Instead, the Legion's dropship shot straight through the thickest part of the swarm's aerial forces and plunged into the center of the ruined city. From orbit, Alliance officers watched in shock. The humans disembarked into streets crawling with Jator. There was no formation like they were used to, no shield lines, no fixed firing points. The humans moved, fast and silent, weaving between the wrecked buildings. Then came the sound. The humans' weapons roared like thunder, sharp bursts that cut through the swarm in flashes of fire and smoke. Every shot dropped a creature. Every movement was precise. They didn't waste bullets. They didn't retreat an inch. One alien officer whispered, "They're hunting them." Within hours, the Jator presence in the city was gone. Not pushed back. Not weakened. Gone. When the Legion returned to the dropship, they moved calmly, weapons still in hand. None of them spoke until the ship's ramp closed. Captain Rain contacted the Alliance fleet. "Vornis Prime is clear. Recommend we move to the next target immediately." Virek's voice crackled over the comm. "Clear! We've been fighting there for months." "How?" "We don't fight them like soldiers," Rain said. "We fight them like predators." The line went silent. Later, in the command room of the station, the Alliance Council reviewed the operations footage. They had expected brave rescues, carefully planned pushes, and captured enemies for study. Instead, they saw total elimination. Sithra looked away from the screen. "These aren't saviors," she whispered. "They're executioners." But when the next distress call came from another world under siege, the decision was unanimous. They sent the humans. The Jator had landed on Frithis Outpost, a small industrial moon that supplied fuel to 3 nearby systems. The Alliance had already tried to defend it twice in the last month. Both times, their forces were pushed back, losing hundreds of soldiers. The outpost was days away from total collapse. When Captain Rain heard the report, he only asked one question. "How many civilians left?" Virek, the scaled Alliance officer, answered carefully. "A few hundred. They're trapped inside the central refinery. Our ships can't break through the swarm's anti-air fire to get them out." Rain didn't hesitate. "Then we land inside." "The fire!" The alien commanders stared at him like he had just said he would walk into a sun. But that was the Legion's way. They didn't avoid danger, they went straight through it. The black dropship sliced through Frithis' thin atmosphere, its engines screaming as it dodged green bursts of plasma from the Jator below. The hull shook violently, but inside, the humans sat calm and silent, checking their weapons one last time. Sergeant Vale, the second in command, glanced at Rain. 2 minutes. Rain nodded. "Straight to the refinery. No delays. If it moves and it's not wearing a suit like ours, drop it." The ramp opened before the ship had even fully touched down. The Legion leapt into chaos. Frithis' surface was a wasteland. Metal structures torn apart, smoke rising from craters, and Jator bodies scattered from earlier battles. But now, the swarm was pouring toward the refinery, a black wave against the silver buildings. The Legion didn't form a defensive wall like most armies. Instead, they split into pairs, vanishing into the smoke. What happened next would later be described by Alliance observers as impossible. The humans didn't just shoot, they hunted. They moved faster than the swarm could react, appearing from side alleys, firing short bursts that cut down enemies before disappearing again. The Jator fought like a single mind, but against the Legion, their numbers meant nothing. Humans were unpredictable, each soldier making split-second choices no swarm intelligence could anticipate. Inside the refinery, the surviving civilians huddled in the dark. They could hear the battle outside, not the steady rhythm of Alliance pulse rifles, but the sharp, heavy sound of human weapons. One by one, the monstrous screeches of the Jator began to fade. Then the door opened. A figure in black armor stepped inside, visor glowing faint red in the gloom. The civilians froze, unsure if they were being saved or doomed. The soldier lifted, a hand speaking through a voice filter. "We're here to take you home." No speeches, no reassurances, just the simple truth. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the battle, an Alliance recon team watched in disbelief. Lieutenant Sari, a young officer, kept her eyes on the feed. "They're not holding the line. They're breaking it apart." Her commander shook his head. "No. They're erasing it. In less than 3 hours, the swarm's presence on Phrythus was shattered. The few creatures that remained scattered into the wastelands. The Legion regrouped at the dropship, escorting the rescued civilians. When they returned to the orbiting Alliance cruiser, Captain Rain stepped onto the bridge, removing his helmet. Virek, waiting there, was struggling to process what he'd seen. Your methods. They are not what we expected. We thought you would save the people and withdraw. Rain's voice was steady. We don't just save people. We make sure the threat doesn't come back. The alien officer hesitated. But you left nothing alive to study. How can we learn from them? Rain's gray eyes narrowed. You don't need to learn from a fire. You put it out. That night, in the Alliance Council chambers, a meeting was held to discuss Earth's role in the war. Some praised their effectiveness. Others feared their brutality. Counselor Sithra spoke softly but firmly. These humans, they are not like us. We fight to defend. They fight to end. It is unsettling. Virek replied, Perhaps unsettling is exactly what we need. The Legion didn't attend the debates. They were already preparing for their next mission. Weapons were cleaned, armor repaired, ammunition restocked. There was no celebration, only readiness. Rain stood at the observation window, watching. The stars drift by. Vale joined him. Council's still arguing about whether they like us. They don't have to like us, Rain said. They just have to point us toward the next nest. Vale smirked. And if they don't? Rain glanced at him. Then we'll find it ourselves. Far away, deep in uncharted space, the Jator Queen stirred. The sudden losses on Vornis and Phrythus had caught her attention. Her hive mind reached out to the outer swarms, directing them to change tactics. The prey had grown dangerous. For the first time in centuries, the Jator adapted not to win, but to survive. The Alliance didn't know it yet, but the war had changed, and the galaxy's so-called saviors were just getting started. The war reports were impossible to ignore. In less than 2 weeks, the Legion of Black had done what no Alliance army had managed in years. They had taken back 3 planets and a moon from the Jator. Entire sectors that had been under siege were suddenly quiet. The news feeds called it a miracle, but in the council chambers of the Galactic Alliance, the word most often used was something else entirely. Monsters. The chamber was a grand circular hall filled with representatives of dozens of species. Their voices echoed as they argued, a chaotic mix of praise, fear, and suspicion. Counselor Sithra, the winged alien with soft silver feathers, stood to speak. Her voice was calm, but the weight of her words carried through the room. These humans fight without restraint. They take no prisoners. They leave nothing behind but ruin. This is not the way of the Alliance. Across the room, Commander Virek stood. His scaled body shimmered under the council lights. They win, he said simply, and if you have forgotten, we are losing this war. Every world they take, back is one we do not lose. An insectoid representative from the Keldar clicked its mandibles. Yes, but at what cost? The people of Phrythus now speak of humans in whispers. Some say the Legion is as terrifying as the Jator itself. The debate raged on. Some saw humanity as saviors. Others saw them as a dangerous force that could turn on the Alliance just as easily as the Swarm. Meanwhile, the Legion of Black waited aboard their ship, the Knight's Spear, docked at Corin 7. They had not been invited to the council meeting. Inside the training bay, soldiers ran through silent drills. They moved with a predator's precision, their boots striking the metal floor in perfect rhythm. Sergeant Vale finished his round and walked over to Captain Rain, who was leaning against the wall, arms crossed. They're still talking about us up there, Vale said. Some of them want us gone. Rain didn't look surprised. Good. If they're scared, that means they understand. Vale smirked. And if they tell us to leave? Rain's gray eyes narrowed slightly. Then, the swarm wins faster. Their choice. A few hours later, the summons came, not from the council, but from Virek himself. In a private meeting room on the station, Rain found Virek waiting, his posture tense. They're concerned, Virek began carefully. The council wants proof you can work with the Alliance, not just around it. Rain's expression didn't change. You called us because you were dying. We're doing what needs to be done. Now they don't like how it looks. Virek's scaled brow furrowed. They're politicians. They need victories that inspire, not victories that frighten the people. The captain's reply was sharp. A frightened survivor is still a survivor. A dead one doesn't vote. 2 days later, the Alliance arranged a joint operation. The Legion would fight alongside an Alliance battalion on Varos 9, a frozen mining world under swarm attack. The mission was meant to show cooperation. Cameras would be present. The people would see humans and aliens standing side by side. The moment the dropships landed on the icy surface, Rain knew the plan would fail. The Alliance commander on the ground, a tall, armored reptilian named Koran, insisted on a defensive perimeter around the mining colony. We'll hold until reinforcements arrive, Koran declared. Rain glanced at the black clouds forming on the horizon, not weather, but the swarm. Reinforcements won't matter if they surround us. We hit them now. Koran shook his head. That's reckless. Rain stepped closer. It's survival. The council observers recorded every word. When the swarm hit, it came like a tidal wave. The Alliance troops held their line at first, firing in formation, but the Jator didn't stop. They climbed over their own dead, swarming up the ice ridges and tearing into the defensive walls. The Legion broke formation immediately. They split into their usual hunting pairs, leaping across the battlefield, cutting through the swarm's flanks. Explosions burst across the ice as humans planted charges under the swarm's advancing lines. Within minutes, the battle looked less like a defense and more like a purge. The humans drove deep into the swarm's core, forcing them to scatter. The Alliance soldiers were left staring, unsure whether to follow or stay in place. By the time the Legion returned, the swarm was gone. The mining colony was safe, but the battlefield was littered with nothing but blackened husks. Back on the station, the council watched the footage in silence. The humans had saved Varos 9, but they had also made the Alliance troops look slow, ineffective, unnecessary. Sithra finally spoke. Do you not see? They are not just winning the war. They are making us depend on them completely. No one could answer her. That night, in the quiet of the Knight's Spear, Rain stood at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Vale joined him. They don't trust us, Vale said. They shouldn't, Rain replied. We're not here for their trust. We're here to finish a war they can't. Vale looked out into the blackness. And after that? Rain's tone was cold but certain. After that, they'll never forget what humans are capable of. Far away in the cold void, the Jator Queen shifted her focus again. The prey was dangerous. The prey was clever, but she had faced predators before. This time, she would make sure they learned fear. The Jator had been losing ground, but the victories came at a cost. Every world taken back by the Legion of Black was left in ruins. The swarm was retreating, but they were not gone. Somewhere in the deep, dark edges of the galaxy, their queen had been watching, and now she moved. News arrived on the Alliance command station, Corin 7, with a sense of dread. A massive hive ship had appeared in the Kavara system, larger than anything the Alliance had faced before. It was the Queen's personal vessel, an organic fortress that carried billions of her swarm. Entire fleets had fallen in minutes when, She led the attack. The Kavara system was home to 6 populated worlds. If the Queen was there, it meant only one thing. She planned to destroy everything. The Alliance Council called an emergency session. "This is different," Commander Virek said, standing over the holographic display of the hive ship. "If she takes Kavara, the swarm will have a direct path to the Alliance core worlds. We will have no way to stop her." Counselor Sithra folded her wings uneasily. "Then we must send everything we have. Every ship, every soldier, an insectoid." Counselor shook its head. "We've sent fleets against her before. They burn in the first hour." The chamber fell silent until a low, steady voice cut through. "We'll take her." All eyes turned to Captain Rain, who had been standing quietly at the edge of the room. "You?" Sithra's tone was sharp. "A single human unit against the Queen?" "Not to fight her fleet," Rain replied. "To end her." Virek frowned. "You mean an infiltration?" Rain nodded. "Straight into the hive ship. Cut off the head, the swarm dies!" Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. The idea was unthinkable. The hive ship was surrounded by living shields of swarm vessels, and inside it was a maze of organic tunnels and death traps. "It's suicide," Sithra said. Rain's answer was calm. "It's war." Hours later, back aboard the Knights Spear, the Legion gathered in the war room. The holographic map of the hive ship rotated slowly in the air. It was incomplete. Most of it was unknown territory. Sergeant Vale studied it with narrowed eyes. "We don't even know the layout." Rain shrugged slightly. "We'll make it up as we go." One of the newer Legionnaires, Corin, frowned. "And if we get lost in there?" "Then we keep moving until we find her," Rain said. "We're not coming back without a kill." There was no argument after that. Every soldier in the Legion knew the risks. Every one of them accepted. The plan was brutal in its simplicity. The Alliance fleet would launch a massive, direct assault on the hive ship, drawing away as much of the swarm as possible. In the chaos, the Night Spear would slip in close and launch a stealth drop, putting the Legion right onto the hive ship's outer shell. From there, they would breach, infiltrate, and hunt the Queen. When the Alliance admirals heard the plan, most of them refused to take part. "We will not throw away lives for an impossible mission," one said. Rain only looked at him and replied, "Then stay out of our way." The day of the assault came. The hive ship loomed in the void like a nightmare, a massive, pulsating mass of chitin and living tissue, its surface bristling with biocannons that spat streams of green plasma. The Alliance fleet charged in first, their weapons lighting the darkness. Swarm vessels poured out from the hive ship like a flood of insects, crashing into the Alliance lines. Explosions tore through the blackness of space. In the middle of the chaos, the Knight's Spear glided silently toward the hive ship, its black hull almost invisible against the void. 30 seconds, Vale said over the comm. The Legion stood ready, weapons locked, armor sealed. No one spoke. The dropship slammed against the hive ship's surface with a heavy clang. The ramp opened, and the Legion spilled out into the alien darkness. The surface was alive, pulsing, shifting, almost breathing. The air was thick and damp, the smell sharp and strange. "Cutting in," Vale said, planting a shaped charge against the chitin wall. A muffled boom and a jagged hole tore open, revealing the twisting organic tunnels inside. The Legion entered without hesitation. Inside, the hive was a maze. The walls dripped with strange fluids, and the air was filled with a constant low vibration, like the hum of a vast living machine. Shadows moved along the tunnels, Jator warriors, their claws clicking against the walls as they swarmed toward the intruders. The first clash was quick and violent. The humans moved with silent precision, cutting down the creatures before. They could even raise an alarm. Every shot echoed in the narrow tunnels, every explosion rattling the hive's living walls. "This way," Rain said, taking the lead. He didn't have a map. He didn't need one. He moved as if the hive itself was guiding him toward its heart. As they went deeper, the resistance grew heavier. The Jator came in endless waves, their bodies spilling into the corridors, their screeches echoing like war drums. The humans didn't slow. In the chaos, Corin's voice came over the comm. "We're running low on ammo." Rain's reply was calm. "Then make every shot count." They pushed forward, leaving behind a trail of broken swarm bodies. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached a massive chamber. The air was warmer here, and the walls pulsed like the inside of a beating heart. At the far end stood a shape unlike any other. Towering, armored, and terrible, the Jator Queen. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and her voice came not as sound, but as a presence in their minds. "You are not prey." Rain lifted his weapon. "No, we're hunters." The queen towered above them, her body a fortress of living armor. Strange, insect-like limbs shifted behind her, and her eyes burned with a cold, alien intelligence. In the minds of the Legion, her voice came again, not in words, but in a feeling, heavy and sharp. "You are small. You are fragile. You will break." Captain Rain stood his ground. His voice was calm, almost steady enough to sound bored. "We'll see." The chamber erupted in motion. The Queen's guards poured in from the walls. Massive. Warriors with spined claws, moving faster than any swarm soldier they had fought before. The air filled with the sound of chitons scraping and claws striking. "Target the Queen! Ignore the rest!" Rain ordered, his voice sharp over the comm. Legion split instantly into practiced pairs, weaving through the chaos. Explosions from grenades lit the chamber in flashes of orange. Muzzle fire roared like a storm. Vale took down 2 guards in quick bursts, his armor splattered with the hive's strange fluids. "She's moving!" he shouted. The Queen had pulled, back toward a raised platform at the far side of the chamber. The walls behind her pulsed faster, as if the hive itself sensed the danger. The Legion advanced. Corin and Mara, the youngest of the team, laid down covering fire while Rain and Vale pushed up the center. Each step forward was a fight. The guards threw themselves at the humans with reckless force, claws clashing against exosuit plating. Rain moved like a shadow, every shot precise, every step certain. "Keep her cornered," he ordered. "Don't. Give her a way out." The Queen's psychic voice returned, colder now. "You kill as we kill. You are no different from the swarm." Rain smirked under his helmet. "We're better at it." With a sharp gesture, Vale signaled the final move. 2. Legionnaires hurled charges onto the walls near the Queen's perch. The detonations tore through the organic supports, collapsing part of the platform. The Queen let out a sound, not quite a roar, not quite a scream, as she stumbled, her armored limbs bracing against the falling debris. That was the opening. Rain charged first, firing in short, brutal bursts into the exposed joints of her armor. The rounds bit deep, spraying dark, steaming fluid. The Queen struck back with one massive claw, the blow slamming into Rain's chest plate and sending him skidding across the floor. Before she could finish him, Vale's rifle barked 3 sharp shots into her side, forcing her to turn. Corin and Mara came in from the flank, their weapons firing in perfect sync. The Queen's movement slowed, not from fear but from damage. The hive's pulse around them began to falter. "Finish it!" Rain shouted, pushing himself up. The Legion closed in like wolves. Explosives were planted directly against the Queen's torso. The charges glowed red as their timers ticked down. Vale's voice was steady. "Time to go." The team fell back in unison, firing to keep the last of the guards at bay. The Queen staggered forward, her eyes fixed on them, her psychic voice a hiss in their minds. "You cannot kill what is endless." Rain paused at the tunnel entrance and looked back once. "Watch us!" The charges went off. The blast shook the entire hive ship. The Queen's massive form was torn apart in a burst of flame and shattered armor. The walls around her buckled and split, releasing gouts of strange vapor and boiling liquid. Without their queen, the remaining swarm soldiers faltered, their movements turning frantic and uncoordinated. The hive's pulse slowed to a dying heartbeat. Extraction. "Point! Now!" Rain ordered. The tunnels back to the surface were collapsing. Sections of the hive's living walls tore free, crashing down in wet heaps. The air grew thick with smoke and chemical fumes. Vale led the way, blasting apart smaller swarm creatures that tried to block their escape. Corin carried one of the wounded. Mara had taken a claw strike to her side, but she gritted her teeth and kept her weapon ready. They burst out onto the hive ship's outer shell just as the knight's spear swooped in low. The dropships. Ramp opened, and the Legion ran aboard without slowing. As soon as they were inside, the ship pulled away at full burn. Behind them, the hive ship convulsed. Explosions rippled across its surface as secondary charges planted earlier went off in a chain reaction. From the bridge of the knight's spear, Rain watched as the massive organic fortress split apart, spilling pieces into the void. Vale joined, him, helmet under one arm. "That's one for the history books." Rain's voice was quiet. "That's one less nightmare in the galaxy." In the distance, the Alliance fleet had stopped firing. Ships that had been moments away from destruction now turned to watch the impossible happen. The Queen's hive ship, the terror of the galaxy, breaking apart in silence. The comms lit up with frantic voices. "How did they—" "Is it over?" "By the stars. They actually did it. When the knight's spear docked at Corin 7, the Legion stepped off without ceremony. Their armor was scorched, their weapons dented, but every soldier was alive." A crowd had gathered in the hangar, soldiers, technicians, and even council members. No one spoke at first. Then, slowly, applause began to spread through the hall. The Legion didn't react. They simply walked through, silent as ever, leaving the crowd behind. Later, in the quiet of the debriefing room, Sithra asked Rain the question everyone wanted to know. "How did you do it? How did you kill her?" Rain only shrugged. "Same way we kill anything. We find it. We don't stop, and we don't miss." Far from the celebration, the remnants of the swarm drifted in the void. Leaderless, they were no longer the unstoppable force they had been. But somewhere, deep in the shadows of uncharted space, another presence stirred. Smaller, quieter, but watching. The war wasn't over yet. The death of the Jator Queen had shattered the swarm's coordination. Entire sectors, once lost, were now quiet. The survivors of countless attacks were finally free to rebuild. The Alliance fleets, once pushed to the edge of collapse, could now patrol without fear of annihilation. But even as the celebrations began, whispers of the humans' actions spread faster than any victory report. The Legion of Black returned to Corin 7, docking the knight's spear in the central bay. Alliance. Soldiers crowded the hangar, their faces filled with awe, fear, and curiosity. The humans disembarked silently, black armor scorched and dented, weapons still ready, eyes scanning the crowd as if expecting an ambush. Captain Rain removed his helmet. Gray eyes scanned the room, cold and calculating, but not unkind. Sergeant Vale followed, dragging a crate filled with unexploded charges from the hive ship. Behind them, the rest of the Legion moved with the precision of shadows. A reporter from a distant world stepped forward, voice trembling. "Captain, are you heroes or monsters?" Rain didn't smile. He didn't answer immediately. Then he spoke, low and certain. "We're human. That's enough." The Alliance Council convened again, this time in a tone less accusatory and more cautious. Virek, standing tall, addressed the room. "They have saved billions of lives. But their methods, are unlike anything we have known. We cannot predict what humans will do next. Yet, we must recognize the results. Sithra's silver wings twitched. Do we ever learn from them or only fear them? Virek's eyes were thoughtful. Perhaps both. Fear can teach caution, but results teach respect. The aftermath of the Queen's destruction was felt everywhere. On Vornis Prime, Frethus, and Varos 9, reconstruction began. Civilians came out of hiding and survivors slowly reclaimed their homes. For the first time in years, people slept without the constant sound of claws scraping walls or the roar of biocannons. Children ran through streets where once the Jator had hunted. Elderly survivors smiled as alien workers and human soldiers helped rebuild shelters and clear debris. Life was returning, and yet everywhere humans went, people whispered tales of their deeds, how they fought like predators, how they struck fear into the swarm itself, and how they never hesitated. In the quiet of the night's spear, Rain convened the Legion. They were tired, scarred, and worn, but alive. "Rest while you can," he said. "The galaxy will call again." Vale leaned against a console. "Do you think they'll ever understand us?" Rain looked out at the stars. "They don't need to. They only need to survive." Mara, bandaged but still alert, added quietly, "And if they call us monsters?" Rain turned, his gaze sharp. "Let them call us what they want. The swarm doesn't care about names, neither should we." And the months that followed, humanity's reputation spread across the galaxy. Stories told in hushed voices portrayed humans as unstoppable hunters, as saviors who operated outside the rules of other civilizations, as creatures who could destroy threats with terrifying efficiency. Yet to those who had fought beside them, the Legion was more than that. They were focused, disciplined, and loyal to a mission above all else. Even the Alliance began to change. Fleet strategies incorporated lessons learned from the Legion, faster strikes, surgical precision, and the willingness to take risks no one else would. Humanity's example reshaped war tactics, diplomacy, and interstellar cooperation. Pact. On Corin 7, Rain and his Legion watched the stars. They had no interest in honors or medals. Victory was enough. Respect was unnecessary. But a small moment remained, quietly human. Vale handed Rain a hollow image of Frethus, showing children running through the rebuilt streets. "They'll survive because of us," Vale said. Rain nodded. "Yes, and that is all that matters." Meanwhile, somewhere in the void, remnants of the swarm drifted aimlessly. Leaderless and scattered, they were no longer the unstoppable force they had once been. The Queen was gone, and with her, much of the swarm's intelligence. The galaxy could breathe for the first time in centuries. But deep in the darkness, small cells of the swarm still stirred. They remembered the humans. They learned to fear them. And somewhere in the distant reaches of space, another presence, watched, curious, cautious, but not yet ready to act. Humanity had sent its monsters, and the galaxy had survived. At the final debriefing, council members gathered around Rain. Some bowed. Others simply watched in awe. "You've changed the galaxy," Sithra admitted softly. Rain only nodded. "We didn't come to change it. We came to protect it." And with that, the Legion of Black prepared to leave Corin 7. Their next mission awaited, and the galaxy would call again. But wherever they went, one truth remained clear to every civilization they touched. Humans were not to be underestimated. The galaxy had asked for saviors, and Earth had sent its monsters. And the monsters had won.